Okay, today's operation is going to be a little bit different. Even though we've done reading of books and we've done a deletion of books, it seems like every operation is just, has its own challenges. And so today's operation is going to be editing, right? If we're going to allow an end user with the permissions, not any end user should be able to edit books, right? You should have somewhat of an administrator role. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to allow an administrator type to edit books on our Retro Amazon project. And so I have a back end that I'll go ahead and boot up my back end and a front end built in React. And to boot up my front end, npm run dev. And to check its current state of this application, when the page loads, we're getting this like, hey, you're not authorized to see books in the console, and that's fine. We know that. We can log in with a user who has permissions. So if I click the submit book, we redirect. Now we get a little console message welcoming our user. And you're going to see that a server-side cookie is created. So we have an auth token that's created. And we also have the ability to delete a book. Of course, I only have so many books. I'm not going to delete one right now. But the delete book functionality is also working. So if I kind of glance at the components, of course, main calls our root component app, so we really don't touch main too much. If I dive into app.jsx, we have our React router with routes. One route to log in. The home route takes us to the book list. Again, all this could be done a little differently. This is just how we're currently doing it. Presumably, we're going to create a new component to edit our book. And so we're going to create essentially a book editor component. If I look at my book list, though, book list is where a lot of stuff happens. Here we have all of our books in a hook. And when the page loads, essentially, we call our backend route and populate our hook with data. So when the page loads, we get our books out of the database and set the books. It's also worth noting here in this use effect hook that anytime a delete operation occurs, we also hit our backend database and populate our books. Obviously, you got to get rid of the book here. And so there's a function called onBookDelete that basically by the book's ID calls our backend and deletes the book by its ID. And then gives us a little success message in a pop-up window and sets a delete counter, which again triggers our use effect to run and get all the current books. So, kind of the first thing I would think, and right now a lot of our state is happening right here inside of this book list. We can begin to mimic this function with another function called onBookUpdate. Presumably, we can update a book by its ID. And just like before, prevent the default. Now, what is our backend route? Because the next thing here is we're going to call an Axios method to update our book. So let me hop onto my backend, go to the book route, and look at the different backend routes. This is getting a book by the ID, Here's updating a book by the ID. So we go /update/ID. So that's the Axios route that we're going to hit. It's checking, our middleware is checking that the user is logged in. We don't have any permissions. Presumably I'm going to add some permissions here. And that it is a valid object ID in our database. Just kind of glancing at this. If there's a price, we make sure it's a float. Here we call a database function. We're awaiting a database function, passing in an updated book, which comes from rec.body, essentially which we're sending from our front end. So our body is the book that we're sending from our front end. We're sending our updated book into our database method called update book. We're running an update one function to update a book by its ID, and spreading our updated book and returning a result, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the chain of functions that are called on our back end. Again, kind of the important part is getting that route /update by the ID. So Axios.put, again, it is a .put. And I'm going to put in our import meta env vite API URL. That's our environment variable. /API with correct. /books is correct. Update is correct by the book ID that's passed in to the function. Got one extra curly there that's not needed. That's a backtick. And with credentials is true. That's kind of the magic trick that passes that cookie back to the server with your permissions then well, we have a delete counter. I think it would also make sense to have an update counter, just following the syntax that we did before. Const update counter, set update counter. So in our then block, we can have a response where we set the update counter and show toast of a successful method, and catch any exceptions that might occur and throw them in the console for troubleshooting purposes. Okay, so we've drafted our book update function. You know, obviously we need to call that function. And so what we did somewhere along the way is our book list renders book items. And so if I kind of close my nav bar and close my login form and expand this a little bit, if I take a look at my book items, you know, book items receive the on book delete, and I can click this button to delete a book. But presumably this is where I'm going to also need an edit button. And so I'm going to send this function down into book item. So I'm going to say I'm going to paste on book update. So that's sending it down to the child book item. And then I need to receive it inside of the curlies on book update. Now, I might be sending this the wrong... Let's think about this. So here, I need to have an edit button. So I might need to refactor that out. I might not need to receive that there. Let's go ahead and make our edit button, right? Simple enough to make an edit button. Button info. Now, when I click this button, I want to navigate to a component. And so this is not, this is not just going to call a JavaScript function, but it's going to navigate me to my component. So instead of having a button here, let's bring in link. From React Router DOM. And this link is very interesting how this works. So this is going to link me to /books. So this is a front-end URL. Link to /books/update book ID. So we're going to take that book ID and put it in the URL and call this button info. But I don't have a route for this. So I need to make a front end route for /books/update. That's going to be done back in my app JSX. So back in app JSX, I'm going to define a new route. And this is done, the syntax on this end is :book ID. And just to demonstrate this working, we're gonna save it at this point and run it. And so this is done with a capital R. And we have a path. And when you navigate to this URL on the front end, right now it's just gonna put a H1 that says update book. So the workflow is we're gonna click on the button to update book. It's gonna navigate us to this URL and then just give us an H1. And so if I take a look at localhost, I now have all of my my books have an update button. And just glancing at the URL, we got /books/update, and you can see, can everyone see in the lower left-hand corner that my book ID is being appended to the URL? If I click on update, it is showing the update book element. So that's exactly what I want. Now, again, I might need to refactor where I'm sending this update book function that we wrote. But instead of just rendering an H1, let's go ahead and bring in a component, new component in the components folder called book editor. And so this is book editor.jsx. And I'm going to bring in use state. And we're going to export default function called book editor. This is going to receive update, what do we call it? Update book function. I know that much. Book item. Book lists. So on book update is the function that this is going to have to receive. On book update. Return. And for now, I'll just make it a book editor component. Okay. So now our book editor is going to be called instead of just an H1. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but let's just go back to my app JSX. Let's bring in book editor. Import book editor from book editor. And now we're going to book editor. And so when I navigate to that route, we should load up our book editor. Book editor component. So far, so good. I'm also going to need to receive the book. Now, this is where, let's see. You're going to notice that app, this is where you need to hoist state. And so this is pretty commonly done in React, is right now my state is found inside of my book list. Like I'm getting all of my books here. But here's the problem potentially that I see. App, let's see. No, I might be okay. I'm not sure that I need to hoist my state. So book editor. I send the book down. Let's go into book editor, and book editor should receive a book. So I'm going to go back into my book. Okay. So what do we have? We have an ID. We definitely have an ID here. And it's an interesting thing where it's like, my books are over here in state. They're in my book list. And child of book list is book item. I'm clicking on this link, which takes me back kind of here. This takes me to book editor, but I can't, book editor is not a child of book item. Because book editor is not a child of book item, I can't actually send the book object down. Is everyone with me there? You can only send children down. So what I'm actually going to do here is I've got the ID, and I'm going to read that book out of the database again. I'm going to hit the database again using the ID. I'm going to get a book by its ID because I have that ID in the URL. And so the first task at hand, since I'm at this book editor, I need to basically read the ID out of the URL, which I don't read parameter variable in React URL. I forget the syntax for that. Search params to fetch the query parameters. Get URL params in React. And let me see how I did it last time. That's the beautiful thing. I do have, hi Max. I do have this project. Okay, it's a simple line of code to read the ID. If I go back to my book editor. So the ID is sitting in my URL. And so there's a function called use params that's in React Router DOM. So if I import use params from React Router DOM, Then I'm also going to bring in use effect so that when this component loads, I call use effect. Actually, here, it's actually going to be done in here. Book editor. Inside of my book editor, I'm going to declare a variable that calls this function. And what you need to do is your variable identifier has to match the name of book ID right here. So we created this variable called book ID in this route path. So this is a very specific name that we have to use right here. And just to demonstrate this working, I'll just do like book ID, and I'll put it inside of our H1 just to test it. And if I click on update, there you could see that net 93 matches the 93 up there. If I go back here and I click, there's 94, 96. You could see very random generated IDs here. All sarcasm aside, you could see that I am now reading the ID out of the URL. Okay, so now the task at hand is I got to go ahead and read my book, right? I'm going to hit my database again to get my book again so that I can then update that book. So on our back end, we should have a get book by ID, right? So here's a get the book by the ID. It's just /ID. And so we're going to put that call on a use effect. So underneath this, we're going to call use effect. Arrow, curlies, and comma, there's those brackets, to which we're going to do an axios.get API get, let's see, what is my, again, it's just API/books. There's no get here. It's API books /ID is my backend route. Looking at /API/books/ID with credentials. Yeah, import Axios, thank you. Import Axios from Axios. Double check my, yep, import Axios from Axios. So we can use Axios. Okay, so there's the get. Then catch. Okay, so we're going to response with the data into the console, or we're going to log the error. So get the ID, hit our backend, get the book by ID, and then ultimately what we'll do is we'll put this into a hook. Yeah, Connor?
And basically the array box at the end of use effect, don't we need to put a book ID?
Well, I mean, think about this. This is running when you hit that route. So if the book route changes, it should make this run again. Okay, so localhost, and let's take a look at the console. And there we have our, we're getting our IDs, right? So we are hitting. One of those things is that these use effect, these effects, it runs 2 times. So that's kind of a normal thing. Like you kind of saw that already when you hit the home route and you're seeing 2 error messages instead of 1. That's just kind of how it works out of the box. So we are getting the book. So then maybe we do this const book set book, and then we're just going to call set book to response.data. All right, the next thing to do is to begin to render your front end with a form. And so I'll go ahead and make a form element. And we need to get things in there like the title. Now, keep in mind, we have a separate title from the book. So here's what we'll do. We'll do const title set title. So a book has a title. We're going to read the book in here, and then on a use effect, we're also going to set the title to response data.title. Okay, so keeping a separate title, because this will be kind of the updated title, if you will. You might call it updated title. And this is the original book. What other description and price, author? Okay, we'll just do those 4, and you can elaborate as needed, but I just wanted to do a few of them. So here, set description, set the author, and set the price. So we read the book, and then we have these fields for storing the updated values. And inside of my form, kind of start with the div. Let's just do the title, right? So here's the title. It's showing the title hook, and on change, we're modifying the updated title. So we're just loading the title with the book data, and then we're changing the hook for the updated title. So I just want to kind of glance at this. Right, so this is the Da Vinci Code, and we're getting the Da Vinci Code here, and I can type in here. So far, so good. You know, these are bootstraps. I would just add class name of form label. See, book editor, I'm kind of just thinking ahead a little bit. Book editor, that function, I still might end up hoisting that state because that function can't be sent down to book editor from here, right? So I still might wind up making some changes here. But nonetheless, to kind of make our form, we've got a div for the title, one for the description. Again, same exact div, just changing it for title and description. The job's on repeat for the next 2 fields, right? Author. And I know you're not gonna be able to type all this, but let's just make sure that everything's working, right? So all we're doing is changing these hooks. We're not changing the book yet, right? The book object yet. In fact, maybe we just write our function to update the book right in here, because we get the book. So all this work, we might bring the onUpdateBook function into this component. In fact, that's what we'll do. So here's a form tag. So anytime you have a form, you're going to have a submit, which is just a button. And we can handle this submit. So this is going to be, I'm going to say a button type of submit. And this is going to say update book. And again, just to verify that all my fields are kind of in there and they can all be changed. So the DaVinci Code's in there, that's in there, that's in there, 1491. And this seems like some HTML numeric up and down control. ID of price, type of number, that's why we're getting that. If that's the right control that you want to render, that's up to you. But you can see why we're getting a text field for some and a numeric up and down control here. I want to handle a submit event. Instead of passing the event object and then preventing the default, we can just handle a submit. So up on the form tag, we can do an onSubmit. We'll just write a function called update onUpdateBook. Okay, now, like I said, instead of piping this down and bringing it in, I'm going to delete that. So here's my book editor. And I'm going to write my function on book update. I guess I still need to cancel the event. So let's do that. So on update here, EVT on book update EVT. So send the event object into this function, EVT prevent default. And I'm just going to say console log submit triggered. I just want to get a little console log saying that my event listener is doing just that. So if I go to the console, click on update book, it is calling that function. And again, I might have to, unfortunately, I started with writing a function. I might not even wind up using that exactly. So let's make an updated book. Const updated book is an object where we're going to spread book and then apply the title, description, author, and price. So the initial fields are there by spreading the book, and then we're modifying the title, description, author, and price by these hooks. So it's title, colon, title, so on and so forth. And then we just got to call our Axios method to hit our back end with our updated book. So now I'll just console log I'm going to take a look at my updated book. When I click submit, one step at a time is how you solve these problems. inspect. So the Da Vinci Code 2, Dan Brown 2, 1991. And I click here, the Da Vinci Code 2, author Dan Brown 2, genre. So genre, it brought over the genre, publication year, price. So all of the updated fields have been updated. Connor?
For some reason, when I'm clicking on like on the book list,
Mm-hmm.
click update,
Mm-hmm.
all my fields are blank. It's not actually
Okay. Let me help you troubleshoot that. I'll finish this up. I don't have much more to go, and then I'll help you troubleshoot, okay? So we do have an updated book. Right now, just to be clear, I am not using this function that we started off. I thought I would go there, but I didn't. And therefore, I can delete that here, and I can delete that here.
Wait, what did you just get rid of?
I got rid of this function in the book list on update book.
Oh, you just deleted the whole thing?
I commented it out, deleted it, yeah, because what I ended up doing is essentially writing a lot of that logic right here. Right, so I just kind of wrote it in a different place.
Where's the second place you deleted it from?
Oh, the second place was once I wrote this method, I was sending it down to the book item, but I didn't do that, right?
Okay, I thought you deleted two things.
I did. I deleted number 1 here,
Oh, okay.
and then number 2 was in this tag.
I didn't put together commenting out the list that
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're ready to call our Axios, right? So we're gonna do an Axios dot, actually we already have this logic, don't we? I literally wrote this right here. Axios dot put, da 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 da. So I'm just gonna copy those lines for my Axios call into my book editor. I'm gonna paste those in, take those comments out. I do not have a set update counter. I do not have a toast in here. But there is a response.data. So maybe for now, let's just navigate the user back to the book list. Let's just navigate the user back to the book list. So, like when we logged in, we saw how to do that. When the user logged in, we just have this navigate. So there's a use navigate from React Router DOM. And then we make this variable, and then we can call this variable navigate. So on our book editor, we're going to import use navigate. From React Router DOM. And here, navigate equals use navigate. And then in the event of a successful response, we are just going to log the data and navigate back home. Otherwise, we're going to log the error. Okay.
We now need to do something with updated book.
So let's take a look. You're right. So what I didn't do, thank you for that. You caught that problem before I caught it. What do we expect on our update route? Well, our update route expects an updated book in the body. And so what I didn't do in my Axios call was send, just like we sent the username and the password on the login, I didn't send the body. So here on the post, the first object are your fields. And then the second object are the credentials. So I missed the first object. So I'm going to add a comma right here. I'm going to hit enter. And I'm going to spread updated book. Good catch. And let me check my URL on my back end. /books/update is hitting /books /up. Now, number one, this is a put, so let's make sure that it's a put on our front end. It is a put on our front end. And it's /update by the ID, /books update by the ID. So our Axios call should be good. Hitting the correct route on our back end. Spreading the updated book. Credentials, yes sir.
What does spreading it do exactly?
It just takes the object and breaks it down into its properties,
Okay.
right? So
So that way we don't have to keep typing out like a spread book, title, description, author, price. We can
yeah,
just do
yeah, you don't have to do, yeah, exactly. You don't have to do title, updated book dot title.
So login, if we had set a one item to be both email and password, we could have, instead of sending back email password, we could have just a login info.
It could have been that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, so I guess the question is, what does this look like? Well, again, your backend is expecting an object with like a title property, which is updatedbook.title. It's expecting a description, what are the fields that it's expecting, right? But this is essentially a shorthand for doing that. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, let's see what breaks. So here, the Da Vinci Code, and so really all I could see is the title and the description. So again, I'm going to go to my console, and I'm just going to update the title and the description. I'm going to click Update Book and Bad Request. And so I have to check my route, API Books /update, backend route. Check this error. Bad request. So first I got to check the URL is correct. Update book by ID. API books /update by ID. So again, let me go to front end, API books update book ID. That path looks good. It's a put. Pause this while I troubleshoot. Okay, good. I finally, I dug down into my data errors details and it says _ID is not allowed. Well, when I'm spreading my book, it is including the _ID. So we're trying to update a book including its ID in there. So this line didn't work. So I am going to do the longhand. Really, I just need to remove _ID. And so there is a delete, right? So if I take a look at my updated book, check this out, right? So if I take a look at my updated book in a console.log, right? So you know how to delete property from a JavaScript object. It's just done with a delete command. So I could delete the updated book ._id, right? So I'm going to delete updated book ID. Now if I console log updated book, it should not include the ID. So kind of bring this back, refresh. If I click on update and I inspect console, update book, ISBN title, notice there's no ID. There's all the properties with no ID. Good. So now my updated book no longer has an ID, which was causing a conflict. And if I bring back my Axios put, now let's see what else breaks. Into the console we go. Update the book, DaVinci Code 2, and the number 2. Update book. Okay, now my message is a success message that the book has been updated, and there we have DaVinci Code 2 and title has been updated. The ultimate check is to pop open the database and make sure that the DaVinci Code has been updated. In our retro Amazon book, DaVinci Code 2 has been updated in our database. Okay, so like I said, its own unique set of problems. Every operation, literally everything that you do, you know, even though it's a very similar operation to the things we've done in the past, it's going to be a little bit different. So now, to kind of flush this out a little bit more, let's go back to app.jsx. Notice we have a show toast function that we could send down to our book editor. Show toast equals show toast. In our book editor, we can receive show toast. Right? And use show toast like such, and response.data. I don't know, title. So this will say, this will be a little success message that the book has been, and hopefully it's our new title. Again, I think it may be, but let's go back here, home, DaVinci Code 2, we're going to click update, DaVinci Code 3, okay, update my book. Okay, good, but not good, because my toast didn't show up. So let's see what's up with my toast. So back to app. Show toast is show toast. Show toast takes a message and a type. And book editor. It might, let's just do response.data, because I was guessing at that. And it's not a good thing to guess. I'm guilty of it. Okay, dot message. We have a response.data. Dot message is our string. This response.data was an object. Response.data.message is a string. So I had to send it a string because that's the way we wrote it. Yay, book updated. And if you don't want that to say book jibber jabber updated, you can refactor your backend to send a book title. Alrighty, so that's how we're going to update a book. Now what we have left, obviously, is create a new, okay? But I'm gonna kind of let you guys go into lab and continue to work. And then on Monday when we return, we will go ahead and do the new book. Yes, Connor. I understand.